Hi, this is Beverly Fest Sinclair, founder and president of Take That Listing, and I'm excited to share with you today 5 things you should never do if you really want to take a listing. You know, as a listing agent, we've got to remember that it's all about the sellers, it's not about us. And these mistakes are some things that I've personally done and I've seen in my years of coaching other agents, seen other agents do. So let's go ahead and get started. When I was first early on in my real estate career, I would spend at least another 30 or 45 minutes of the first part of the marketing presentation going all about, I call the wonders of me, you know, why they should choose me, how I'm similar to them, what schools I went to, what my hobbies were, what I liked, where I was from, where I vacationed, what I was good at. And while I think it's extremely important to find some kind of commonality with the sellers, you know, after a few minutes, their eyes are like rolling back in their heads, and they were thinking, gosh, would she quit talking about herself? So there's actually 2 ways you can address this. One is you can email them an information packet about you. You can, if you want to put pictures of you and your family and of your dog, and if you like to sail, where you sail, or if you went to college, where you went to college. It's important to get some kind of tie-in with the sellers. With myself, it was always either music, I was from Texas, or I was a teacher. Those are the main things I made sure to mention because I got a lot of business from people saying, hey, I'm a teacher too. You know, what did you teach? Things like that. But don't spend your time at the table talking about that. Either email them a package ahead of time, or you can drop off a binder. The binder can have any pictures about you, where you're from, where you went to school, what your hobbies are, same general types of information. And in both cases, just ask the seller to make sure and look over the information prior to coming, because when you want to sit down at the table, say, you know what, I wanted to let you know how qualified I am, a little bit about me as a person, but when we sit down and talk, I want to focus on you and what's important to you. The second mistake agents make is I call it the all about me. Their listing appointments really are all about the agent. And this is not where the focus should be at all. The focus should be on the seller. And again, this kind of goes in with number 1. While you want the seller to know your qualifications and your criteria and why they should choose you to list their home, you don't want to go on and on and on about you. You know, a little bit of that goes quite a long way when you're talking to a seller. They really want to know what you're going to do for them and why they should list with you. So while it's very important, again, to let the seller know about your qualifications, your criteria, why you are the best person to take the listing, do it ahead of time. And I found too, it's best if you don't say how great you are, but get other people to say how great you are. So one of the things I found that works really well for me is getting testimonials, because I don't want to, you know, it's easy sometimes for some people to go on and on about, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I was in the gold club, and I was in the platinum circle, and I was in the super duper club, and don't do any of that. You know, the sellers, again, a little bit goes a long way in establishing your credentials. So the best thing to do if you want to let them know how really good you are is don't say it yourself. Get your clients to give you testimonials. And if it has to be your cousin that you sold the house to, that's okay. You know, put their name on the testimonials. Get your manager maybe can write, if you're fairly new and you don't know a lot, get your manager to write a letter. What about a great agent you are and how conscientious, or, you know, whatever it is that makes your selling point the best it possibly can be. Okay, the third thing you don't want to do at a listing appointment, if you really want to get the listing, is not ask questions. When you're with a seller, it's important to let them know that you're focused on them. And you want to ask the seller questions about what's important to them. And don't stop with your first answer. For example, if you have a seller who's moving to Texas, he may say, well, I'm moving because my job is transferring me there. That is an answer, but you haven't gotten to the heart of it. You haven't gotten to what the thing is that keeps him up at night or that worries him. And so dig a little bit deeper. 2 really good questions I learned to answer. They're open-ended, but they kind of dig down deeper is, what will having X do for you? Or the second one is, what about X is important to you? Going back to our scenario, if I had a Mr. Seller who said, well, we need to move because I've got a new job in Texas. That's great, Mr. Seller. But what about moving to Texas is important to you? And he'll say, well, I got to get down there to report for my job the first of next month and want to keep the family all together as quickly as possible. Wonderful. Well, getting down there at the first of the month and keeping your family all together as possible is important to you. What about that will help you? Or what about that is important to you? You want to keep getting till you find the thing that tugs on his heart. Maybe it's guilt because he feels bad that he's got 4 kids and his wife is having to handle all this by herself at this end. Or maybe he will truly miss his family and he doesn't want to miss out on that. But unless you get good at asking questions, you're not going to find that out. How and what questions are really good ones to ask because they're open-ended, number one, and number two, they tend to get you down to the motivation of your client much quicker. Okay, our fourth thing you never want to do, and this is, I hesitated putting this in here because it's like, really, people do that? Yeah, some people do, is being overly critical. I was watching an agent do a market analysis one time, and I wanted to go, shut up! Don't say that. He was walking through the house, he goes, boy, you sure got a lot of junk around here. What are you planning on picking all of that up? It's like, really? Did you really? Or you're just over here to waste your time, aren't you? You're not really here to try to get this listing because that's insulting. Don't do that to a seller. You know, you might need to address things in the house, but do it in a kind manner and do it in a way that doesn't offend them and doesn't offend their taste, their decor, what they like. For example, I had a lady one time who had collectibles everywhere, and it was like 3 or 4 deep in the bookcases. And it was like you walk in and you felt like you were in, you know, a Precious Moments store. and I, rather than saying, you really need to box all this stuff up, this looks so cluttery, I said, you know, I know these precious moments are really important to you, aren't they? And she said, yeah, I've been collecting them for years. And I said, you would really hate for some of these to be broken, wouldn't you? She said, yeah, I really would. I said, you know, when we have buyers come to the house, the agent can only be with one person, and sometimes the whole family goes. So we go with one of the parents, and if they separate, there may be 3 or 4 different groups going through your house at the same time. I would sure hate for a kid to, you know, pick that up and think how pretty it is and play with it and have one of them dropped. Why don't you go ahead and pre-move them? Get them boxed up in tissue paper, put them in the corner of the garage and put a blanket over it, or put them in your attic, or take them to your nephews or whatever to get them out of the way so we know your collection is intact. You see the difference? One affirms the seller, affirms what's important to them, and doesn't insult them. Rather than saying, geez, you spent a fortune on all this stuff. When are you going to box all this stuff up? Man, this is cluttery. Don't do that. I know Mr. Probably going, I would never do that, but you might be surprised. The fifth thing you want to do when you're going through a listing and you want to make sure you get the listing, and I would recommend doing this right after you have the contract signed. Don't do this before because you may be giving away your knowledge for no good reason. That is staging a house. It's real important to stage a house. And by staging, I don't mean that you have to be a professional decorator or you have to take the accredited staging professional class. I've been staging homes for years. I think the ASP designation is great. But if you're not into that, that's okay. There's still some basic things that you need to tell the seller. And again, keeping in mind number 4, that you don't want to be overly critical, you might need to tell the seller, you've got a lot of dirty dishes lying everywhere. Say, okay, how are we going to handle the dishes? What's it going to look like when buyers come to your house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Or if the house has a dog odor, or sometimes foreign cooking, there's different kinds of cooking, the spices have kind of an odor. You might want to say, you know what, I can tell you really love Indian food, or Chinese, or Mexican, or whatever kind of food it is. I really like it too. However, if after I've been cooking with it for a little bit of a while, I can tell there's a little bit of a scent in the home, or, you know, even a dog. Say, you know what, I know you have a dog. I've got 2 dogs. I love my dogs. I also know that the buyers aren't going to love my dogs like I do. So can I recommend a couple of things? Because I can tell you have a little bit of a pet in the house, but just make it delicate how you tell them. But tell them, because you're like a doctor. And you've got to let the patient know if there's something they're doing, is an action they're taking is not helping them, tell them in a kind and respectful manner. Say, you know what, you might want, if it rains, make sure you towel dry your dog off outside, and here's some Pet Fresh you can get and put it in the carpet and vacuum it up, and I think it'll take care of everything. It's just a slight little bit of odor, but we're going to get that taken care of. If you are not comfortable telling the seller a lot of things to do, make a checklist. And maybe start outside. You know, Are the hoses rolled up in its proper place? Are there toys cluttering the walkway? You know, make it like maybe a room for room. Kitchen. Are the dishes up off the table and off the sink? Do you have a bunch of dirty dishes in the sink? Or, you know, have you wiped down the countertops and all your appliances? Make a checklist so that they can go through, and maybe have them give themselves a rating. I'm an A, B, C, D, or F in this. And talk about them. If they ask for help, say, how can I help you? You want me to go over some of these with you? Or how can I explain this to you so we'll both be on the same page and we can get your home sold for the best possible conditions? Another thing I've told sellers before sometimes is, you can go through a house, even if you're not a decorator, you can go through and say, gosh, you know, all these rooms are various shades of purple. I've seen it. I've had that house. And, you know, I sometimes say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we want to make our home appeal to 49 out of 50 buyers. It's like having, we don't want a totally empty canvas to paint on because we don't want it to look like a hospital, just white everywhere. But we want to undecorate some. All of your furnishings, your things all go together so nicely. But the chances of everybody having the exact same pieces of furniture and the exact fixtures, table lamps, things like that, is very unlikely. So let's undecorate just a little bit. And you can approach it like that. And I think when you say you want it to appeal to 49 out of 50 buyers, and you know, put it off the buyer. They don't have your sense of style maybe, or they don't have your sense of decor. But we got to make sure that with all the homes on the market, that they might like your home, but they're not going to buy it simply because of paint. Because Mr. and Mrs. Seller, some people just can't see past paint. Let's help take that objection away before they ever walk in the door. I welcome you to go to Listing Leaders and sign up for our monthly newsletter where we interview the top agents in our industry who are listing homes. You can go to takethatlisting.com and see Listing Leaders there, as well as our blog, List More Now. Make it a great day.